Hello and welcome to Chapter 4. This is everything about 16th note syncopation, or as I sometimes like to say, demystifying 16th notes. You see, sometimes 16th notes can be one of the more confusing levels of subdivision. When you have 16th note syncopation in a piece of music, it might look like you have to decode some kind of hieroglyphic code that takes forever for every single piece of music. But in this chapter, we are going to learn two things that are going to make syncopation at the 16th note level very simple. The first thing is we are going to develop the correct right brain model for how 16th notes are supposed to feel. And the second thing that we are going to do is we are going to realize that there are only 16 possible combinations of 16th notes, and we are going to take our time to feel each one of those 16th note combinations, and so that we can develop a 16th note vocabulary. The first thing that we are going to do in this chapter is we are going to develop the correct right brain infrastructure for how to feel 16th notes. And the cool thing is that we already developed this infrastructure in chapter 2. That is the concept of the anticipation and the rebound. When we first learned about this, we used it to learn about downbeats and upbeats, and we learned that upbeats that come before a downbeat are anticipating that downbeat, like taking a step before you jump, or after a downbeat, it is a rebound. So an anticipation is when you are adding energy to go to a stronger beat, and a rebound is when that energy is coming off of the initial beat and causing another rebound, right? You can also have all three. You can have an anticipation that leads to a downbeat and then that rebounds off of that downbeat. But here's the thing, because we have now been using downbeats and upbeats for several chapters, your feeling of upbeats has grown very strong, and now upbeats are just as vivid to you as downbeats, and therefore we can now add anticipations and rebounds to and from the upbeat as well as the downbeat, and that is where we get the E and the In a group of 4 16th notes, the downbeat and the upbeat are still present as the first and the third note in that group of 4 notes. However, now in between them, we have the E and the And the purpose of the E and the is to simply act as an anticipation or a rebound. However, in this case, you can have an anticipation or a rebound to the downbeat, and you can also have an anticipation or a rebound to the upbeat. When we go over all 16 of the possible combinations of 16th note, you are simply going to be able to understand each of these combinations as some sort of rebound or some sort of anticipation. It's that simple. As you can see in this diagram, the E can either be a rebound away from the downbeat or an anticipation to the upbeat, while the is a rebound away from the upbeat or an anticipation to the next downbeat. Now that we have learned how to apply the concept of anticipation and rebound to any combination of 16th note that we see, and we now have right brain infrastructure to feel these patterns rather than just try to solve them like equations, it's time to look at all 16 possible combinations of 16th note, which I have shown you here on this page. Now I've grouped them into groups of single note combinations, double note combinations, triple note combinations, and then of course we have the only 4-note combination, and don't forget about the empty combination, which is the rests, which are always very important to be able to do. As you practice each one of these combinations, it is essential that you think to yourself, is this a rebound or an anticipation, and that you feel it as such. Remember that if you've had trouble with 16th notes in the past, it's probably because you've been trying to solve them like an equation. But the thing is that we actually don't want to read 16th notes any more than we don't want to have to read the letters in a word or the notes in a scale. When you see a word, you simply recognize the shape of the word without having to read the letters. In music, it's always a good idea to be able to recognize a group of notes as a chord or a scale without having to think about what each individual black dot is. And in 16th notes, we want to already know what each one of these combinations feels like the moment we see it. And that is why we're going to spend some time before we start doing these exercises simply feeling each one of these patterns with the metronome. Now before we get started, I want to emphasize a point that it is okay to practice these combinations without the metronome if you need to. I have a lot of students who, when I teach this for the first time, we do it without the metronome and we simply feel each one of these combinations as an anticipation or a rebound. You can still feel that without needing the metronome. So if you're having trouble, you can either try going slower than what I'm doing in the video, which is going to be 40 BPM, or you can simply turn the metronome off and you can sound out each one of these combinations. The same goes for the exercises. If you're having trouble keeping up with the metronome, you can sound your way through each exercise one beat at a time. You do not have to do them in rhythm. Sometimes when I'm teaching these exercises to students for the first time, we will only read one beat at a time and we will stop in between each beat. It might feel silly at first, but what it's really teaching you to do is A, to recognize each of the combinations and how it's supposed to feel. And the second thing it does is it teaches you to be in control, because a very important part of rhythm is being in control of your perception. So if you feel like you're out of control when you're playing these 16th notes and you can't grasp them, then take it one beat at a time until you're comfortable recognizing the combinations, and then you can add the metronome in. To get things started, we will begin reading the double note combinations, then we'll read the triple note combinations, the 4-note combination, and last but not least, we will come back to the single note combinations. The reason for this is that with the double note combinations, you have a strong beat available in every combination, whether that's a downbeat or an upbeat. And so it's a little bit easier to sense the double note combinations, triple note combinations as anticipations and rebounds. Whereas once you come back to the single note combinations that have just E's and just U's, you want to already know what they feel like as anticipations or rebounds, because there won't be a downbeat or an upbeat present for you to perceive that, and you'll just have to imagine it. Okay, so let's go on over and put our hands on these combinations. Welcome to the 16 combinations of 16th notes. We are now going to take our time to feel each one of these combinations at 40 BPM with the metronome representing the upbeat. I am going to play through each of these combinations 2 times. However, I would strongly encourage you to play through these combinations multiple times. In fact, it would be a good idea to maybe even try playing through each combination for a whole minute or 2 minutes, because you really want to understand what each one of these combinations feels like. There's only 16 of them. The thing is that rhythm is not an equation to solve on paper. When you see these symbols written on paper, you don't want to solve them like an equation with your left brain. You want to recall a feeling that you have programmed into yourself through these exercises. I'm going to start with the 2-note combinations, then I'm going to play the 3-note combinations and the 4-note combination, and the very last thing we're going to do in this video is the single note combinations. That's because in the 2, 3, and 4-note combinations, you have the presence of a downbeat and or an upbeat, and that way you have more reference as to whether your 16th note, your E or your is an anticipation or a rebound, whereas in the single note combinations, you must imagine the downbeat or the upbeat and whether or not your E or is anticipating or rebounding. Let's get started on the double note combinations, number 5, and all of these combinations again will be at 40 BPM, the metronome will be the upbeat, and they will all simply be played hands together. Number 5 is a 1E, and therefore our E is rebounding off of the downbeat. 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E, 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E. For number 6, we will simply move everything over 1/16th note. So now, instead of the E rebounding off of the downbeat, the E will be anticipating the upbeat. 1E and, 2E and, 3E and, 4E and, 1E and, 2E and, 3E and, 4E and. For number 7, we will again move everything over 1/16th note, and now we have the and The will be rebounding off of the and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Moving on to number 8, we will now have the anticipate the next downbeat. This is a very important rhythm, the dotted eighth note, 16th, because this is one way that sometimes people notate swing. Although we don't want to worry too much about that. We just want to think about our anticipating our downbeat. Here we go. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. Were you able to stop on that last without playing an extra downbeat at the end? It's a fun challenge. Guess what? We are going to skip number 9 for right now because those are just regular downbeats and upbeats, which you are already very good at. We are also going to skip number 10 for now, and we will come back to it when we do our single note combinations, because number 10 is just E's and just U's with no downbeats and upbeats, so we'll come right back to that. We're now going to move on to our triple note combinations. This is number 11. We have a 1 E and therefore you can really think about this as the E rebounding off of the downbeat and then maybe anticipating to the upbeat. Let's give it a try. Here we go. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. For number 12, we will scooch everything over 1/16th note. Now we have the E anticipating the and then rebounding off as an 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and For number 13, we again are now scooting everything over, and this is interesting because what's actually happening in this pattern is it is now crossing over the beat. The group of 3 includes the and the and then the next downbeat, okay? And so actually the entire pattern is not contained within a single beat because the actual pattern is overlapping. It contains 2 pieces from the previous beat and 1 tiny piece of the next beat. Here we have the rebounding off of the upbeat and then anticipating the next downbeat. Let's give it a try. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. For number 14, we have reached my favorite combination of 16th note. This one sometimes is seen as intimidating, but once you understand how to demystify it with me, I think it will become one of your favorite ones as well. This is a very important rhythm for one of my favorite styles of music, which is ragtime. Now, one of the reasons why this rhythm is misunderstood is because, as you can see, the actual pattern exists between 2 beats. The beat in and of itself is not what the pattern is. What this is an that is anticipating a downbeat and then rebounding off as the E, right? So an anticipating the downbeat and then a small E rebound after that. So what you have is the 2E, 3E, right? So let's give that a try. 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, 4 E, 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, 4 E, Were you able to stop on that last It's always a fun challenge. Every time I play that rhythm, I cannot help but hear all of my favorite ragtime songs in my head. Here we are at number 15, the only 4-note combination. This rhythm looks simple because it is simply all of the 16th notes, but remember the trick to this one or any very repetitive rhythm like this is keeping it steady, all right? So let's go ahead and put our hands on this one. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and As promised, we are going to end this video with the single note combinations. But guess what? We're not going to practice number 1 because that is simply a downbeat, and we are already very good at downbeats. We are going to start with number 2. This is just an E, all right? Now, you can use your imagination. Do you experience your own downbeat strongly and therefore experience the E that you're playing as a rebound from that? Or are you going to think of your E as an anticipation to the sound of the metronome? There are no wrong answers. It's whatever feels most comfortable for you. I'm going to get the metronome started and let's see what happens. 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and, 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 E and, 4 E and. All right, it is now time to skip past number 3 because number 3 is simply the upbeat. And again, we have gotten so much downbeat and upbeat practice that we are skipping all of the combinations that are only downbeats and only upbeats, even though they are technically members of the 16th note family. We're going to skip over to number 4, which is just the All right, now remember, it is up to you to imagine, is your a rebound that you're rebounding away from the sound of the metronome, or is it an anticipation to your very own downbeat, right? I like to think of the as an anticipation to my downbeat, but like I said, there's no wrong answers. It's whatever you're most comfortable with. So here we go with number 4. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. And last but not least, now we are actually going to do number 10. It's kind of interesting if you think about it, but if you play the E's and the U's without the downbeat and the upbeat, you get what I call the in-between downbeats and upbeats. It's technically the same size as a downbeat and upbeat, but it is shifted to the 16th note position. So this is a very cool rhythm. It's actually very predictable, so it looks worse than it is. Once you feel it, you'll just go, oh, it's that feeling. It's a pretty common musical feeling. And so let's get started and give it a try. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. There we go. Don't forget an honorable mention to combination 16, because one funny thing that I realize when I teach this to students is that no matter how good you get at these 16th note combinations, the hardest combination is always playing nothing. That's right, rests are the hardest rhythm to play because they require us to be patient and not play, but simply feel the beat. So don't forget your good old-fashioned rest. Don't forget that we are programming the right brain here. When you see a 16th note written on a piece of paper, you are not solving it like an equation. You are remembering what that symbol feels like from the subconscious of your right brain. And that is why it is important to spend some time on each of these combinations learning what they feel like. Thanks for watching this video. If you found it useful and you'd like to support the Piano Dojo, please consider subscribing and buying the book.